Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Blood Oath, which is episode 19 of season 2 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, one episode at a time. In this video, I cover the second season episode, Blood Oath. So Blood Oath is the episode in which 3 elderly Klingons come on board the station. Apparently they've gathered to fulfill a blood oath to murder the man who killed their firstborn children. And apparently the reason why they're coming to Deep Space Nine is because Dax was also involved in the blood oath and also had vowed to cut out the heart and eat it of the man they refer to as the Albino. However, it was Curzon, not Jadzia Dax, who had made this vow, something that King, Kor, and Koloth were not aware of when they came to Deep Space Nine. However, Jadzia insists that she feels obligated to fulfill the oath just as much as Curzon, and it takes some convincing. Kor is right on board right away, but Koloth she has to convince, and King she pretty much has to shame into finally letting her go on the mission. However, when she goes on the mission, she discovers why King didn't want her to go is because it's a suicide mission. The King is lying about their chances, that they do in fact have no chance to succeed, and so he plans to die. However, Jadzia Dax, being a science officer, knows how to even the odds by disabling all the disruptors, and then comes up with a fighting chance to actually win. So they go and fight and battle, and Koloth dies in the battle. Kor is injured but survives. King does a final confrontation against the Albino, but the Albino gets the better of him and strikes him down. Jadzia goes up to the Albino, but the Albino's daring her to kill him, thinking that she doesn't have it in her. But while Dax has him distracted, King, who's still alive, comes up from behind and kills the Albino, and then King himself dies, and Kor sings a sad song for his friends who have died. Jadzia returned to the station, not knowing if Sisko will let her resume her duties, because Sisko did not want her to go on a murder mission. However, they seem to just acknowledge each other without a word, and the episode ends. So, the main gimmick of this episode that I did not mention in my synopsis was that the episode brings back 3 notable Klingons from the original series. Kor was in the episode Errand of Mercy, which was in fact the first appearance of the Klingons. That was in the first season. Koloth was in the episode Trouble with Tribbles in the second season, and Kang was in the episode Day of the Dove in the third season, and it brings back the same actors who played these characters, which is a nice little gimmick. It's a nice little homage. What I do like about that, though, is that the episode itself doesn't call all that much attention to it. Like they could have had lines like, "Oh, Kor, you remember that time you faced off with Captain Kirk on that planet? And Kang, you remember that time that you were stuck on the Enterprise with Captain Kirk and your crews were killing each other?" They could have done, but they didn't. In fact, when I first watched this episode, even though I had seen the original series, had seen all the episodes in question, I did not know this until I read an article or something that pointed it out. And I'm like, oh, okay. After I saw the episode, so I wasn't even aware of it while I was watching the episode. So I do appreciate that they do have these Easter eggs and call-outs, but they don't go out of the way to be like, hey, look, it's the person from the original series, get it? So I do appreciate that aspect of it, and it is kind of a cool thing to bring back the same actors to play the same characters from the original series. Now, I talked about this when I covered the original series. When I got to each of these episodes, I mentioned, they'll appear again in Blood Oath. And Kang also makes a brief appearance in Voyager in the episode Flashback. So he actually has the honor of appearing in 3 Star Trek series, the original, DS9, and Voyager. Missed out TNG. But anyway, and the actor actually returns to play a different role in Deep Space Nine. He returns as in the episode The Muse. Jesus Christ. Anyway, hashtag fuck the Muse. Anyway, so yeah, I talked about it when I covered these original series episodes, because the first episode that the Klingons appear, Errand of Mercy, one of my favorite episodes of the original series, core, amazing character. The Klingons are slightly different when in appearance, of course, for the original series, they're totally different. But Core, he's similar. He's got the same sash that Worf wears in TNG. And he had a line like, it's a shame we couldn't have met in battle. It would have been glorious. Like, that sounds very like Klingon, like what the modern Trek considers to be Klingon. So it's Klingon-ish. It was a bit more based off of Mongolians, I believe, at the time. But then you had Kang in Season 3, which when I reviewed the episode Day of the Dove, I referred to it as the first episode where the Klingons are really acting like Klingons in the original series. It's really the forebearer that really, I think, informs what the Klingons would later become in Star Trek 3 and then TNG as becoming the Klingons that we know, the warrior race or whatever. That it's really the first episode that brought it up, even though they don't say stuff like, warriors and today is a good day to die, but they do behave a little bit more like actual Klingons do. And so Kang was the first one to do that, so I totally buy Kang in this episode. I totally buy Core. Core is actually very similar. Like, almost, you can see that this is the same character in Errand of Mercy. Koloth, on the other hand, is the oddball out. This is something I covered in Season 2, because he's from Season 2 of TOS. And the problem with Season 2 that I covered when I covered TOS is that it portrays... The way it portrays the Klingons are completely un-Klingon-like. Totally. Like, Errand of Mercy, you can see they're Klingon-ish, but then Season 2, they were more like Ferengi or Cardassians, probably a combination of Ferengi and Cardassians. They were maybe more like, not like Romulans, I would say. Like, I disagree with the theory that the movies and TNG swap the Klingons and Romulans' personalities around. I think that's not true. So I wouldn't say they were Romulan-esque, more Ferengi-esque than anything. If anything, they were like Cardassians, like stupid Cardassians. They're more like Ferengis. And Koloth in particular, this is something I always love to quote from the actor who played Koloth. He talked about, because, he's been to conventions and all this stuff, and the fandom knows who he is, and he was talking about how people would come up like to him in the street and be like, hey, say something in Klingon. And he would be like, my dear Captain Kirk. Because when he appeared, he didn't actually... The Klingons didn't exist. The Klingon language that we know of was not made up until it was started to be formed in the motion picture. So 10 years after he did the original series. And it didn't really come to fruition until, Star Trek 3 really made up the Klingon language, and then TNG really cemented it. So the... what he played in TOS might as well not be a Klingon. Because he was just, he didn't act anything like a Klingon. He was like, oh, my dear Captain Kirk. And he's like trying to trick him. He was being more like a Cardassian. I could actually see Garrick kind of being like Garrick-like, except nowhere near as clever and as smart, but still. Ferengi, I don't know if, like, the one who was in Friday's Child was definitely Ferengi-esque, but maybe a little bit Ferengi, maybe a little bit Cardassian. Anyway, not Klingon at all. So it's actually, so the character of Koloth that appears in this episode is essentially not the same character at all. As I said, Core actually fits really perfectly, slots really perfectly into the way he was portrayed in the TOS. So does King. He slots perfectly into how he was portrayed in TOS. Koloth, on the other hand, it's a new character. And I've heard people try to make bullshit excuses to be like, oh, well, he's just acting that way to get the better of Kirk, or he's just pretending to be diplomatic, or whatever. Bullshit. I'm sorry, bullshit. This is not the same character, and these are not Klingons in the second season. They were not portrayed as Klingons. They're nothing like Klingons, because it's before the franchise really decided what Klingons actually were. So it is odd. It is hard for me to associate Koloth with, because, and if you actually ask the actor, I'm sure he would say that the way he portrayed him was utterly different than how he was portrayed in the original series, because he had to. It's just not the same character at all. But anyway, that's the problem with choosing a Klingon from the second season of TOS, because they weren't portrayed as Klingons. And while I'm on the topic of these three Klingons, the part of why the Enterprise episode was a divergence, or whatever it's called, where Manny Kondo tries to come up with an in-universe excuse for why the Klingons look like humans during the original series time, that frustrates me, and I don't consider it canon because it doesn't fit. It's bullshit, and I think other Star Trek properties ignore it, as they should. Because what I always point to is these characters, Koloth and King, because if it was a mutation, a genetic, trying to be genetic enhancement, then how come they look like Klingons now? Did the enhancement wear off? That's not how they portrayed it in Enterprise. And also, like, that whole Enterprise thing just doesn't make any sense, because they're saying, oh, only certain Klingons who did it. Then how come every Klingon looks like humans during the original series, and then every Klingon looks like Klingons during the TNG or even the movies era? So, no, it's just a makeup change. Don't try to come up with the fucking in-universe excuse for that. It just irritates the hell. I hate it. I hate it when people try to come up with in-universe excuses for what's clearly a production issue. Just leave it alone. It's a production issue. Don't try to come up with it. And I know some fans are different. Some fans actually prefer the in-universe excuses. I don't. I fucking hate them. They're just production issues. Leave it at that. Suspend your disbelief. Move on with your life. But anyway, the existence of these three disproved that episode, because there's no reason why they would change from looking like humans to looking like actual Klingons. But I'm sure, like, people would come up with bullshit headcanon to try to excuse that as well. It's just more bullshit. But anyway, so as for the episode itself, so I think I have a vague recollection of there being some sort of marathon, Star Trek marathon one. I think it must have been before. I think it was like in between season 3 and 4 of DS9. so only one season of Voyager had aired. And they were showing, like, voted upon fan favorites or whatever from Star Trek. So they showed, the famous, City on the Edge, Mirror Mirror, whatnot from the original series, and they showed, like, Best of Both Worlds, Yesterday's Enterprise, whatnot from TNG, and they didn't show any Voyager episodes because that show was too young. But I was curious which episodes from DS9, because they said they'll show some DS9 episodes. So I was like, oh, what DS9 episodes are they going to show? They showed this one and Defiant. And what do those two episodes have in common? Cameos from other shows. See, that pisses me off. And this obviously was before Trials and Tribulation came out, because once that came out, everyone calls that one of the best episodes, and it's just because it features cameos from other shows. DS9 is a good show on its own. The fact that people would only point to episodes with cameos from characters from other Star Trek shows, it's obvious. I think it's because people who don't know DS9 and don't know how great it is, who just watch it for these cameos, vote on it and say, oh, I only like these episodes because it has characters I know. And I expressed in other videos how I feel about people who don't give DS9 a shot, who say, oh, I don't like that show, with like watching 5 episodes from the first season and determining they don't like the show. Try watching 5 episodes from TNG. Watch Code of Honor. Watch Lonely Among Us. Watch Angel 1. Watch Hide and Q. And what else should you? What's another one? What's another good one for you to watch from season 1? Coming of Age. Yeah, watch Coming of Age, Code of Honor. Yeah, the ones I just mentioned. And then tell me how much you love The Next Generation. Tell me how great of a show Next Generation is if those are the only 5 episodes you watch. So get out of this bullshit with I don't like Deep Space Nine. You don't fucking know unless you watch some of the good fucking episodes. Jesus Christ. I'm sorry. That drives me insane. But anyway. So, where was I? So yeah. Yeah, so I've always held it against this episode for the fact that people seem to highlight it as one of the better episodes of the show just because it's got those actors from the original series. Now, don't get me wrong, as I mentioned, I think it's cool. I love it. I think that's a great special thing to do. But it doesn't mean this episode's one of the best of the show. It's kind of like Relics. Relics is not really a good episode at all, but some people call it, and put it in their top 10, say it was one of the best of TNG, just because fucking Scotty is in it, when in fact the episode itself is kind of not good. It's not constructed well. So I do hold that against this episode. When I think about this episode, I'm like, gosh, this is just the cheap fan service thing, but it. As I said, it itself is not cheap fan service because they don't even call attention to the fact. But it's the fact that people make it that way, that they point out and be like, oh, I like those ones with those TOS Klingons because it has TOS characters in it. When in fact this episode's not that great. Now, it's not bad. I don't think it's a terrible episode. In fact, I think I'm too unfair on it because of the fan reaction to it. I think it's unfair, so I'm a bit unfair to it because when I watched it yesterday, I was like, well, this is actually better than I remember. It's actually not that bad. But it's not that good either. Well, it's not great, I should say. It's good, but it's not great. Because here's the thing, and this is something that some people complain about, is that half of the episode is Jadzia trying to convince the other Klingons to go on the mission. And there's a couple ways of looking at this, because I was just watching the Delta Flyers with Terry Farrell, and she loves this episode, and I think that has more to do with the fact of her personal experience in acting in it and acting with these well-known good actors, which fair enough. Like, I can understand why she would love the episode. But she was saying that the writing was really good and really clever, because it's about she has to take different approaches with each Klingon to try to get them to get her on board the mission. With Kor, it has to appeal to his vanity, basically. Like, he's saying, so sort of in the heart, being like, you are the Dahar master and you deserve this, and appeals to that side. Whereas Koldal, she has to appeal to his strength, because she has to prove herself that she is a worthy warrior in battle. And to King, she has to appeal to his intellect, to sort of outwit him and get him to acknowledge her in a sort of intellectual level, which I think is very clever. And I think that's a very clever observation from Terry Farrell, but I don't entirely agree with the King aspect of it, because as we learn with King, it's not really about that. It's more that the reason why he was so resistant of her going was simply because he knew it was a suicide mission, and she was a young, young person who just started her life, he thought this would be a bunch of old men at the end of their lives going out in a glorious death. And when he finds a young woman in her 20s, she's like, well, this isn't for you, because you're not an old person who's about to die. And he even said, like, he kind of gave this away earlier in the episode when he said, when he asked how Curzon died, and Jadzia explained, in the bed hospital, yelling at the people who loved him, and he was like, that's a shame. He deserved to die in battle. And you read into that line, he's saying that's what he wanted to give him. He came to Deep Space Nine in order to give Curzon that honorable combat death, but he found that he's too late, and instead it's Jadzia, and she has her whole life ahead of her, and so he doesn't want her to die. So it had way more to do than that, than appealing to his intellect. But it's a nice thought. It's a nice thought. So you can understand that that's kind of why the episode is structured the way it is. It's why half the episode is spent on convincing the Klingons, because that kind of becomes the point of it. And also Jadzia convincing herself. And that chat she has with Major Kira about, how many people did you kill, and Kira getting uncomfortable, but then realizing that there was a reason Dax. Like, I love the line where Kira's like, you're not thinking of killing anyone, are you? And Jadzia's just like, me? No, of course not. And she, like, really red alert, like, holy shit, she is thinking about killing someone. Like, that was a good scene. Like, I loved, and that was a good character moment between Jadzia and Kira, because it didn't get that much. There was a couple, like there was one earlier in the Siege, where they were, went on the mission to Bajor together. But that was and usually they just have like girl talk, a couple of girl talk scenes, like in various episodes, which aren't really good uses of their relationship. But here, this was a really good use of their relationship, of her, Kira, like giving a heart to heart about, you asked me what it's like to kill someone. When you kill someone, you lose a piece of you. And so that was powerful. That was actually a really good scene. But so the first half is about them setting the stage, but the problem with that, the issue that it brings up, that other people have heard hold against this episode is in the second half when they go to attack the albino. You have no attachment to the albino. You just told very quickly in dialogue that he killed their sons. Okay, that's bad, but you don't know who this character is. You don't really know the backstory. You're just told that in speedy exposition. So, at least for me, and I know a lot of other people also feel this way, you have no attachment to what's going on. Because they spent way too long on Jadzia trying to get to go on the mission, that once they're on the mission, you kind of don't care. It kind of goes by too fast. Now, I noticed when I said I liked it better when I watched it, because I kind of noticed that the part of the point, though, is not the albino. It's the characters themselves, it's the Klingon characters themselves. Like when Koloth dies and Kang dies, and Kor is left singing. Like, that's sad. Like, that's actually very emotionally powerful, and the whole thing with Kang getting to kill the albino and then thanking Jadzia, thank you for leaving the kill to me, but right before he dies. Like, that was powerful. And I also liked how once Jadzia figured out that he thought it was a suicide mission, but convinced him that they could possibly do it, that an honorable victory is better than an honorable defeat, that he was like, perhaps today is a good day to live. Like, that was a good line. That was a powerful line. And then at the end, when right before he died, it's like, I was wrong. Today is a good day to die. Like, that was powerful. That was emotionally powerful. That did get to me. So I can get the argument that the point kind of isn't the albino. The point is just their journeys. But I think you lose something. And I don't know, because when you had that huge battle, when they were like trying to infiltrate the castle or whatever, and once they got in, it all felt kind of, I don't know, distant, like, or I just felt very disconnected from it. Like, I didn't particularly care about what was going on. I didn't care about their mission to get revenge. I didn't care about the albino itself. Just came off as the mustache-twirly two-dimensional villain. It's just flat out, oh, don't let those Klingon filth get in here. Like, so I didn't care. So even though those moments at the end were powerful, and I stand by that, but it has the whole attack sequence I was so detached from and didn't give a shit about. And by the way, I just want to point out real quick that the sets they use for the internal shots of the albino's fortress was the same, a reuse of the set from Masaka's temple in the episode Masks. So it's interesting how they reuse sets back and forth. And that is the drawback of spending the entire first half focusing on Jadzia joining the mission or not. Some time needed to be spent actually establishing the albino, who he is, and why we should care about him, and making him less than just a two-dimensional cardboard mustache-twirly villain. We needed that time. So if you spend too much, and honestly, you did not need to spend as much time as you did. Like, I love the scenes with Odo at the start where he's like, oh, your people are waiting to celebrate you, or whatever. And when Koloth comes in and is like, I'm Koloth, and Odo's like, how'd you get in here? And he's like, oh yeah, how'd you get in here? And he says, I'm Koloth, and Odo's like, that doesn't answer my question. And he's like, yes, it does. Like, that's a cool line. But none of that's really entirely necessary. Like, you could really skip out all that, and you could cut back on the whole Jadzia, can I go kind of thing. And you need to actually get us more invested in why we should care about them getting their revenge on the albino. Just spitting out a line of dialogue very fast is not a way to get us invested. And I don't know. The other thing that bothered me about this episode is the whole Jadzia being like, "Oh, I don't. What's it like to kill someone? Oh, I don't know if I could actually kill someone." She has the Dax symbiote, who's lived multiple lives throughout 300 years, including Curzon, who has the reputation of being a bit of a swashbuckler. You gonna try to tell me Curzon never killed anyone, like in combat or anything? Like, I could buy that Jadzia hasn't because she's young, lieutenant. But Curzon surely has. And she would know that she would remember. So her hesitation to kill and her asking Kira, like, "Oh, what's this like?" And I don't really buy it. I also don't really buy Sisko's negative reaction. I did kind of think it was kind of cool, as when Jadzia's packing to go, she's like, "Oh, Benjamin, I was just gonna go see you," and he just says no. Kind of reminds me of Captain Shaw from Picard season 3, which I know obviously came way later, but still, that watching it now reminds me of the no, just saying no right away. But the reason why I think Sisko's demeanor, I don't totally buy it. First of all, his whole you're gonna kill someone, like, again, he knows Curzon. They killed someone for sure. Like, not flat out murder, but like battle that blew up a ship or something like that. Definitely has happened. But anyway, Sisko's whole attitude, the reason why I don't buy it is because it's Klingon law. And she's respecting Klingon law, and she isn't necessarily going to be the one to, like, cut out his heart and eat it or whatever. They never told us of whether or not Kor and her actually did that. I think maybe Kor mentions in a later episode when he's telling the story of this that he ate the heart, but I don't remember. I'll wait till I get to this. But I don't know, because someone else was making the point that the Klingons are a close ally to the Federation and Starfleet, and they rely on that close alliance. And so if they were chastising, a friend of theirs who helped Klingons get their revenge, then that might damage that alliance, or the relationship, at least, between the Klingons and Federation. But I don't know. It just, maybe I could buy it, but it just seemed a bit out of place to me. I don't know. I just didn't buy the ending where Jadzia confronted the albino, and he's like, it looks like you lost your appetite here. That's just a cliche to me. The cliche is like, "Oh, you don't have it in you," and the bad guy, like, walking right up to this person, putting the weapon right up to them and going like, "You don't have the guts, you can't kill me, you don't have it in you, blah blah." It's just a cliche I'm kind of sick of. Even when I first saw this episode in the 90s, I was sick of it. I was like, yeah, that's just a cliche. Kind of don't like it, but anyway. The other scene I have to mention is where Kor greets Jadzia and says, "Curzon, my old friend," and she just says, "I'm Jadzia now," and he just looks at her and goes, "Jadzia, my old friend," and hugs her. So I've seen this as memed before by, like, the trans community, and saying, like, using this as an example for how people should treat people after they transition, instead of making a big deal and being like, "Well, I'm not going to call you that. I know you by this name," and refusing to call them, or being like, "Oh, why should you think I should do," and, like, argue whatever. Just be like, "Oh, that's your name? Okay." There we go. Like, how respectful that was, and how Star Trek was showing the way way back in the 90s. And Terry Farrell was also acknowledging this, saying that she had many fans who were trans come up to her and told her how much that meant to them to see that as a shining example of, just simply go, Curzon, my old friend, be like, no, I'm Jadzia. Okay, Jadzia, my old friend. Like, yeah. So that was definitely worth it. And I always thought that was a good scene, too. Anyway, so I would now like to thank all those that supported me on Patreon, who not supported past tense, but present tense, support me on Patreon. Very much appreciated. It does help me continue with the channel. So I'd like to give a big special thanks to Brandon Neal Howes, Jordan Johnson, and Antarius. Thank you all so very, very much for your strong support. I would also like to give a shout out to Benjamin Mead, Greg Marley, Francisco, Chuck Hooks, Kyrie091, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky, Matty Jester, Joel Lavals, Alessandro Migalacio, Norman Buchwald, Stephen Kennedy, Brenton Berg, and Allison Fordyce. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. So we do have a few Patreon comments on this episode. First comment is from Alex, who says, I never cared for Jadzia and skipped her episodes during rewatches, so going by old memories, I'd say pros, Kor, Koloth, and King. Cons, Jadzia and the showrunners struggled in defining her character and giving her relevance in the show. 6 out of 10. Yeah, I don't mind Jadzia. I do admit that they were definitely struggling to find her character. I talked about what's it called, Playing God, where they totally upplayed the mischievous side of her, and it was so out of character that it felt like, as Norman Buchwald put it, that she was acting like she was on spring break. But I will say I do like her character more in the later seasons, and I think season 2 they're mostly getting her right. Like, I do like some Jadzia episodes from season 2, like God, what's that one called? Invasive Procedures. Although she's barely in that one, to be fair. But yeah, I think she's better in season 2 than she was in season 1. And in season 3, she'll be better than she was in season 2. So I think she's getting better. And I've heard some other people complain about her acting. They thought that her acting kind of tanked this episode, and that it stood out like a sore thumb compared to these great actors who played Kor, Koloth, and King. And I disagree. I thought her acting was fine in this episode. I thought it was actually kind of good in some places, and I thought she did like have nice chemistry with these characters. So I would disagree with that opinion, which I know isn't coming from you, but yeah, it just reminded me of that. Anyway, next comment is from Kyrie091, who says, Blood Oath, more like Blood Noth. Mark, let's be real. No one likes this episode. You see, holograms don't have blood, and they can't take oaths. Therefore, based on the title alone, it's evident that it is not a Vic Fontaine episode, and that's why no one likes it. Back in the 60s, when Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek, he did so with the hope that one day he'd be able to realize his dream, Vic Fontaine. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do it before he passed away, but on his deathbed, he said to Rick Berman, "Hey, Pally, make sure you make Vic Fontaine after I die." That's why this episode gets a big fat blood and oath from me. I gotta be honest, Kyrie091, Blood and Oath is probably one of your worst ones. Last, for the Journey's End, what did you say? No, it wasn't Journey's End. Well, oh, god damn it. What episode? There was an episode where you made Profit and Loss, you said. Hold on, let me find out what you said. You said vomit and toss. And you said that you don't feel good about that one because it was gross. I actually like that one. I thought that was one of your better ones. Vomit and toss. It might be a little gross, but I think it's a funnier pun than Blood and Oath. I think Yeah, not to be too harsh on you. I know you try. You get it right sometimes. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't Gene Roddenberry who created Vic Fontaine or wanted Vic Fontaine. It was Ira Stephen Bear, because he's fucking obsessed with Vegas and lounge singers, and yeah, decides to ruin a good show because of it. Anyway, next comment is from Antarius, who says, more than half the episode is spent doing almost nothing and just endless talks about whether Dax will participate or not, and about Klingon culture that I personally don't care for at all. I get no enjoyment out of seeing these TOS characters again, most of all because they look totally different and there is no real connection to the old episodes. I didn't buy Dax's friendship with the Klingons and the way she was determined to go with them. The Klingons must be at least 120 to 130 years old at this point, but very fit for this age when it was established that Klingons were so long-lived? The scenes on the planet were okay, mostly because of the nice exterior shots. Next week on DS9, more characters from old episodes visit the station. The Metrons, the Edo Gods, Nagilum, the Excalibrans, the Dowd, the Organians, and of course Q hold the annual Congress of godlike aliens at Quarks. My episode is 3 out of 10. You know, are you trying to pitch an episode for DS9 because you're about 30 or so years too late? But that's a good episode. I'd buy it. Well, not really. I know. Yeah, Nagilum. I don't know if Nagilum's a godlike alien. I mean, kind of. He's just, I mean, you could say he's just way more advanced, but so are all these other ones. And especially the Excalibrans, like, I don't know if they're godlike either. But anywho, yeah, I'm sorry I got distracted. What were you saying before? Okay, the point you made about the Klingons being 120, 130 years old, I was thinking the same thing. Like, it doesn't fit. They're way too old. I think they might be older than that. Yeah, I know they try to pass it off like, oh, I'm old, but no. This, like, yeah, Klingons are not that long-lived. In fact, everything would seem to imply the opposite, especially Alexander's accelerated growth would seem to imply that they actually have short lifespans. But, you know, Trek is never consistent in these kind of things. They just go where the plot takes them, and they want to have cameos, so cameos it is. I know there's some other, like, B-canon tried to act like Klingons have long lives because of this episode, but yeah. I, like you, am not buying it at all. I do, on the other hand, I do buy Dax's friendship with the Klingons, though. I do buy it. I think it works. I don't think she's out of place. I think she has some nice chemistry with them, particularly with Kor and with Kang. So, yeah. Anyway, next comment is from Stephen Kennedy, who says, this episode is a strange one. I buy the Klingons going on a suicide mission for revenge for their firstborn sons. I don't accept Kang's deal with the devil, aka the Albino. I know that this is backwards, so is this story? It seems that these 3 Klingons made a blood oath with Curzon Dax, but haven't seen Dax in 80 years, which was implied by Kor. Professor Mark, I have a question. Why did they come to Deep Space Nine, as the station is only 2 years old, so how did they know Dax was there, and didn't they know Curzon died? Jadzia wants to honor this blood oath. I don't think her character would be like that. So if the Klingons didn't see Dax for 80 years, it reminds me of this on the Rings of Power TV show. Prince Durin for 20 years might be the blink of an eye to an elf, but I've lived an entire life in that time. A life that you missed. Maybe the Klingons should have traveled to the multiverse and found the Curzon Dax in the episode Fissure Quest. I like the way Sisko didn't try to stop Jadzia because Curzon was great friends with the Sisko. I think he knew Jadzia would never forgive him if he tried to stop her. I still like this episode even if it's a ridiculous plot. So my rating is 7. The episode proves Odo likes Quark, as when Kor comes out of the holosuite to stand in the middle of both of them, the man loves me, couldn't you see? It was written all over his back, out of 10. So, to answer Professor Mark here, to answer your question, this is what the episode is trying to tell us. Now, whether or not you believe the episode, I think you have to suspend some disbelief to believe the episode, but this is what the episode's telling us of why they didn't know Curzon was dead and how they knew Dax was at D-Space-9 is that they looked up because they knew the blood oath that was going to be fulfilled, so they looked up somehow where Dax was, and they found out that Dax was on D-Space-9. And Kang says in this episode that he didn't try to contact Dax over subspace because that's how the Albino knew of them before, over subspace. Then again, later on in the episode, we learned that the Albino already knows they're coming and he made this deal with them, so therefore that excuse kind of goes out the window. But if you buy the excuse, that's why he didn't contact Dax over subspace, and that's why he didn't find out that Curzon had died. Now, the reason why I say you have to suspend disbelief to buy this explanation is because if Kang can find out that Dax is serving on D-Space-9, that whatever information, wherever he got that information from, should also specify that it's Jadzia Dax, not Curzon. Like, yeah, so that's hard to buy, that he could know that just Dax, but not know the Jadzia part. But that's what the episode's trying to tell us. Whether you want to believe that or not is up to you. I don't really myself. But it's all plot contrivance. Which I think is what you were getting at. So, yes, you would be correct. Anyway, let's see. What else have we got here? Yeah, lower decks reference for those who didn't get the Curzon. Yeah, that Curzon would have fit in better here for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I did like how the scene with Odo and Quark, how Odo tells Quark to open the holosuite, and Quark's like, he'll kill you. And Odo says to him, no, he said he'd kill you. Open it. It seems like that would be more motivation for Quark not to open it. He's like, you're trying to convince me to open it by saying that? But I think Odo is just fucking with him. And of course, Odo's not going to let this Klingon kill Quark. I doubt he would actually kill him. It seems like Klingons threaten to kill people a lot more than they actually would be willing to go through with it. Because imagine if Quark killed Quark, he'd get arrested, there would be a hassle, he would be held. I mean, maybe his high prestige and stature would set him free. Maybe he could claim diplomatic immunity, but still it would be a huge hassle to him, and he would never bother with it. So it was just an empty threat to begin with. Seems like Klingons always make empty threats, is what I'm saying. Anyway, next comment is from Brandon Neal Howells, who says, Dax can't act her way out of a paper bag, and if the Klingons spent more time taking vengeance and less time talking about it, it might be a better episode. But I really doubt it. Mark, was it really easy to take down the albino, or was that just the impression I got? Certainly the opaque visors on the guards' helmets were silly. I would like to live in the albino's fortress, though. And another episode with no consequences. 4 Klingon days out of 10. Well, the fact that this episode has no consequences, I actually buy. Definitely buy that a lot more than profit and loss. Now, as far as the albino, I thought this character was a Klingon, but I just watched this podcast where they said, "Oh, he's not a Klingon, he's an alien." Well, that would make more sense why he says, "I don't want that Klingon filth to get in here," but he kind of looks like a Klingon. I mean, I thought he just looked different because he was an albino. But anyway, I guess that's neither here nor there. Was it easy to kill him? I don't think so. Like, Koloth died in the process. I mean, they're trying to say that these are badasses who can take on 40 men and survive, and it's because that their phasers were disabled and they're not that good at hand-to-hand combat. So it's not it's not completely realistic, but it's not the least hard. It's not the hardest thing for me to buy in this episode. It's a fact. So that's just me. Anyway, next comment is from Norman Buchwald, who says, "When I first saw this episode, it didn't hit me these were the original actors from TOS. I now appreciate the episode much more. Yes, I agree with others. It took too long for Dax to get acknowledged to be part of the Blood Oath, so that the time they combat the albino and his minions may have been too short. And what we saw, I have to admit, could probably be better for the important heroic deaths of 2 key characters. As far as continuity goes, thanks to Manny Kodo from Enterprise, we now have the genetics, etc. story about Klingon looks, which means these 3 either did some genetic manipulation or cosmetic surgery to get the classic Klingon look. I'll give this episode 6 blood oaths out of 10. Yeah, that whole Manny Kodo thing is utter bullshit. It is utter bullshit. I do not consider it canon. I don't buy it, and it's just dumb. Just like I don't consider the Discovery Klingons in season 1 and 2 of Discovery. They're not canon either. It's Kalish. Anyway, god damn it. Let's see. Took too long for Dax to get acknowledged. Yes. 100% agree. They needed to speed that along. Anyway, next comment is from Ricky, who says, this episode was fine. I mean, it was a bit of fan service to the TOS fans that the 3 big Klingons in TOS would just so happen to be on DS9, and that would also just happen to know each other and would just so happen to make a blood oath with Dax. Again, this was a tell but not show. So me personally, I didn't have attachment to this particular storyline, and although I do like Jadzia Dax as a character, I think there is an episode in season 4 where she really shines, probably the best episode, but I noticed all the episodes in season 2 that focused on her, like this one, and an early episode about Trill Apprentice is not really that good nor interesting. Don't get me wrong, this isn't a bad episode, but it doesn't stick in my mind like other episodes of the show, so my rating is a 6 out of 10. Is the episode in season 4 you're referring to Rejoined? Because I think that's one of the best, if not the best, Jadzia episode. Handles the topic of that they cover in this episode about past lives and how Trill Peace treat past acquaintances. It handles that better than this episode does. This episode was kind of an excuse to bring out these 3 TOS Klingons. Kind of, sort of. Oh, by the way, one thing I forgot to mention that's very important about this episode is I It's the first episode that really establishes Curzon's close relationship with the Klingons. We did get an episode earlier, I think it was Playing God, where Jadzia was singing Klingon with the Klingon at the Klingon restaurant. And so it established that she knew some Klingon. But I think this is the episode that really hits home that she has, knows a lot about Klingon culture and knows how to use a bat'leth, is very familiar with Klingons. This will become very important when Worf comes on board the station later in the show. So this episode at least establishes that, so it's good for that, if not anything else. Anyway, thank you, patrons, so much for your comments. So my rating for Blood Oath out of 10 is going to be a 7. Very good. This episode's not bad. It's fine. It's pretty good. It's enjoyable. As I said, it has some really nice moments. It does have some good I think there is good chemistry between Jadzia and the Klingons. And I think that there's some good moments throughout the episode. But, yeah, it as a story structure, it is lopsided. Too much time is spent on Jadzia trying to convince the other Klingons to let her go, that by the time we actually get to the mission, we don't really care about it. They needed to spend more time actually giving us a reason to care about the albino in the mission. So that's why I disagree with anyone who would say this is a great episode just because, and I think they're saying that just because there's TOS cameos, and just because there's TOS cameos does not automatically mean it's a great episode. But it's still good. I don't think it's a bad episode. As I said, there were nice moments in it, like Koloth and Kang's death was really emotional, really powerful, and the ending was kind of emotional. So yeah, it gets a 7 out of 10 from me. So that is it for my review of Blood Oath. So if you're watching this video around the time I first release it, there's still time to vote in my top 10, not my top 10, but your top 10 favorite and least favorite episodes, or best and worst episodes of Star Trek Next Generation. I'm going to be holding a live stream at the end of the January after I finish my coverage of TNG, where I will take everybody's list who voted, submitted their list, and I'll contabulate them and smush them together and come up with a collective list from all my viewers of what the top 10 best and top 10 worst episodes of TNG are. So, if you'd like to participate in that, and please do, because the more the merrier, leave a comment in this video or any of my videos on my channel. I'll get them. I won't approve them, so and I'll save them for myself, but no one else will see them to hide the results. But I will add them to the collective, and we'll come up with a top 10 best and top 10 worst. So yeah, that would be great if you'd want to participate in that. And also, if you really like this video and you want to support the channel, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. Link is in the description below. There's different tiers and there's different rewards. And as I do a Patreon only series where I revisit reviews that I've already done. But if you don't really want to support me on Patreon or can't, that's fine too. You can really support the channel still by leaving a like, subscribing, leaving a comment, that sort of thing. Helps me out a lot. So let's see what's coming up on the channel. Let's see here. Saturday will be my review of Firstborn. Monday I'll be over on Patreon for a Patreon exclusive video revisiting my review for the Maquis parts 1 and 2. Wednesday back on my main channel for a new public review for Bloodlines. And then Thursday covering also the next TNG episode, Emergence. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to subscribe as I continue to cover Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek The Next Generation, which is almost over. Yeah, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.